Thanks for joining this webinar, which is sponsored by the Illinois Community College Board and part of the Coffee Break series and the Pathways to Results project at the Office of Community College Research and Leadership at Illinois. The session is led by Kysha Frazier, who covers real-time community partnership employer and worker engagement strategies, as well as how to use competency profiles rather than traditional job descriptions for hiring and training. Frazier is a Senior Policy Associate at Corporation for a Skilled Workforce.
All right, welcome everybody to our first Pathways to Results webinar in our what we like to call our Coffee Break series. And we're excited to welcome Kysha Frazier, Senior Policy Associate at the Corporation for a Skilled Workforce. And she'll talk about advancing racial equity through workforce partnerships. Everybody is muted as a participant because we had a lot of people register, and so we will facilitate the Q&A at the end through the chat box, and I'll also provide contact information in the event that you want to reach out and we run out of time to answer your question. So please use the chat box for that. And I'll tell you a little bit about Kysha, and then I'll turn it over to her. So she joined CSW in 2008 as a Senior Policy Associate, where she conducts a blend of research and development, project implementation, and technical assistance to strengthen companies and communities. She's the lead for the Workforce Benchmarking Network, aimed to identify meaningful outcome benchmarks for workforce development field focused on using data for continuous improvement. Kysha is currently partnering with the National Governors Association to provide national customized technical assistance to grant recipients of the American Apprenticeship Initiative. She is also leading a regional initiative to strengthen the capacity of organizations to use data to improve results in partnership with the United Way of Greater Philadelphia and Southern New Jersey and the Job Opportunity Investment Network. Additionally, she's working with local community-based organizations and employers in an employer engagement academy in the same region. And you're going to hear about these things today. And Kysha also has a background working in higher education. So before she worked in the private sector, she served as the Assistant Director of Career Services at Hope College. So I will turn it over to Kysha.
All right, thanks so much, Marcy, and thanks everybody for joining me today. I am going to actually deactivate my camera because we were just talking. It gets kind of weird if I'm looking at myself and presenting as well. So give me a second to do that. All righty. Okay. And so hopefully everybody is seeing the screen here. I want to say about a year ago, I had an opportunity to participate in an OCCRL Idea Lab in July, and I got a chance to come out to Chicago and meet with a group of researchers, faculty, and workforce development professionals, and we met in focus groups to inform the racial equity component of the guided pathways. So happy to reconnect with OCCRL today, and as I've used and borrowed lots of information from its leader, Dr. Zamani Gallagher, and other pieces that the office creates. So again, thank you. And that's me. So Corporation for a Skilled Workforce, a little bit about my organization. We're nearly a 30-year-old workforce intermediary. We're located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with staff throughout the country. I'm actually in right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, but I'm originally from the Midwest. I'm a Hawkeye, I'm an Iowan. So I understand and have been to Illinois and Chicago many, many times. The mission for CSW is to go deep and catalyze change in education, economics, and workforce development for vulnerable people and communities. And we do this through the creation of custom tools. We design and deliver technical assistance. We measure workforce data and really look at opportunities to evaluate progress. And we connect partners who want to collaborate, and we call it connecting the spaces between the dots. The Philadelphia and Southern New Jersey workforce learning community began in the fall of 2018. And that's really what I'm going to be talking much about today, is that collaborative and work in that region. The partnership began with 3 organizations, which is United Way and Join, which is a division of United Way. It's a job opportunity and investment network. And they approached us based on really some prior work we had done with them in a whole different field. It was the Green Jobs Innovation Fund we had connected with them on. And they wanted to know, how could we go deep in working with their grantees around the outcomes for the people that they serve, and particularly asking questions about what impact is occurring for whom. And so we reached out to Race Forward, and we developed this collaborative really with a greater focus on, again, outcomes for job seekers, specifically when we're dealing with a region that's majority Black and Brown. As a part of the work, we're intentionally focused on the United Way's investment priorities, which address issues of poverty, youth connection to school, youth completing education and job training that provide pathways to career advancement. It also focuses on the increase in the number of adults earning a living wage, and we're doing this all through a race equity lens. So some of the goals of the workforce learning community focuses on, as I mentioned, the ending intergenerational poverty and the impacts for people in the community, as well as examining how we're doing this. And in partnership, not just with Race Forward and Join, the community's CBOs, the community-based organizations, those training providers are partners at the table. And we're helping them build capacity to use data for continuous improvement and share what they tried and share especially what's working with their peers. And we're doing this in a number of ways. One example is with the Workforce Benchmarking Network survey, which I'll touch base just a little bit on today. And then we ask, how do you do what's working and how do you do it better? Do you expand it? Do you replicate it? How do you assess that on a continuous basis to ensure that the program is resulting in meeting the goals that you set forth? So the organizations that we're working with, there's 20 organizations, about half are youth focused and about half are adult. And it's throughout the Philadelphia, Atlantic City, Camden area. And we do on the ground workshops, and we do site visits. So I've gotten really familiar with the area and driving along those borders there. So in general, within the capacity building experience piece, that's the emphasis that CSW provides in our CIP, or continuous improvement process. It's really about sharing information across regions, across similar programs that serve similar kinds of participants, and understanding the impact for those individuals. The CIP model is used to help organizations with their goal setting, and we really get very specific around the targets that they have, the percents in terms of increase or decrease. We also have a racial equity target as a piece of this, and we break that goal into smaller strategies that they can really put their arms around. And we just say, you have to start. We don't want them to start off with a grandiose, elaborate goal that they just feel defeated about. So we say, start. What can you do? Even if it's that big, let's break it down and talk about what you can do by next Tuesday, some of the language you use, just to start. Funders help with strategy, and for them, the help is with strategy and decisions related to where gaps may exist and where focus could be made to increase positive outcomes in the areas in which they serve. So within the WBN as a whole, since 2008, the WBN has delivered workforce capacity building, or folks, CBOs or service providers have received survey data and participated in our survey from over 500 programs in 350 organizations in 62 cities and 26 states. The citywide initiatives have occurred in cities like Chicago, we've done one there, Dallas, Fort Worth, Detroit, Minneapolis, St. Paul, New York, Atlanta, and of course now in the Philly, Southern New Jersey region. We help organizations understand their data, and what we like to do is not just get data for data's sake, but really turn it into useful information that they can use and then make those program improvements. Two major components of the WBN are the on-the-ground pieces that I spoke about, around the coaching calls, the site visits, the peer forums, and the other piece is the Workforce Benchmarking Network survey, which yields the largest national data set of aggregate info on program participants and services and results in the country. From that, those who participate receive reports. They're customized, they're confidential, and what we say, they're apples to apples comparisons on the results that they have for their services as it's compared to selections they make in terms of who they want to compare themselves to. And we provide a number of tools to help guide them in that improvement process, such as the success drivers, and I'll share a couple examples of some tools. Here is one of the tools we use for the capacity building piece, where we ask our training providers to start to examine factors that may influence their outcomes. And we ask it from a number of different ways. Is a barrier that might be occurring that the participant has? Is it a service or strategy factor? Is it something about the team itself? Do you know if there's some conscious or unconscious bias that exists within the team or in which the strategy is laid out? Is there information that's missing that you don't know about the person, about the city, about other pieces of information that might impact the performance of your program? Are there institutional or system factors that influence your outcomes? Where might institutional racism contribute to how or why things are resulting? And some of these are out of your control, or some of these things directly out of control, or some of these things might be things you just hadn't thought about. For example, the bus line doesn't run after a certain time or extend into a certain area. So we analyze results of programs from a number of different angles. Data is one from the survey, so the numerical data, but we also really look at feedback. We talk about hunches. They're doing the work every day. What do you know? What do you hear? And then we push that further into doing some root cause analysis, like a fishbone, really drilling down to asking why, and then reaching out to multiple constituents to confirm or deny some of these hunches. So talking with your participants, talking with other people in the community, talking with leaders, talking with government. So it pushes them from kind of the confines of maybe their program and the walls there, but going around the block, connecting with others who serve similar populations. And it's getting them moving, and it's getting them talking, and getting them thinking about the results they're having and for whom. So one example of a report from the survey, the Workforce Benchmarking Network survey, it's very comprehensive, and it's for service providers who have placement outcomes, where they submit data on types of services provided. It could be looking at a focus on ESL learners, ABE, if your focus is on OJT or pre-apprenticeships, job retention. So there's a number of issues related to areas of focus and service. There's participant information that's gathered around gender, race, education, housing status, abilities, and veteran. So many pieces there. There's job placement outcomes around wages, benefits, and more, and of course, retention outcomes. And that's compared against other programs in the data set. This is just an example that you're seeing here with some fictional data. And we have multiple reports like like this Outcomes Explorer you see here, but we have an equity and wage report that all of the data within the WBN can be disaggregated by gender and race. And again, some of the other resources that we provide that go alongside the survey itself is one where we provide resources and worksheets and things like that, but we also provide one-on-one coaching support for people as they try to figure out and turn that data into information. And we talk to them about what you see here, what matters most to you in terms of your results. Are there disparities that's happening that they're starting to uncover now, and where improvements can then be made? Another resource we hope to update, our last national survey was about 4 years ago. We've relaunched this year. So if you know of organizations that might be interested in submitting data, please connect. I have my information at the end as well as the WBN information. So it's any service provider that does placement is welcome to participate. There's no cost. But this report provides some examples of themes from the analysis of the aggregation of program data collected, again, from that last survey, and we look to do this again. So within the learning community, we've been working with them not quite 2 years yet, but as we listen to them, these are some of the challenges they're experiencing. We hear this often, you know, we're in a majority city that's Black and brown. We already serve very diverse populations. What do you mean? How am I not addressing the equity issue? And we ask them, you know, everybody that's Black and brown isn't the same. It's not a homogeneous group. So if you dissect that data even more, what are you finding? And some have done that, and they found, you know, within my program, it's been majority Black male, but I found that fathers are more successful in our program than those without children. And why is that? And so they're starting to investigate that more, why that outcome for fathers and those without children. So we're pushing them to really, like I said, look at the data, dissect the data in different ways. Organizations, staff capacity and staff turnover, I'd say pre-COVID and certainly now is an issue, even more so. And so addressing issues of knowledge sharing within the organization and being stretched very thin to do this work is something that continues to be an issue for these organizations. Commitment from organizations to adapt new mindsets and fresh skills. Sometimes you hear that we've been doing this for 50, 80, 100 years or whatever, and it's working pretty okay. Why do we need to change things now? And we're helping them open up their ears and using data, using feedback and in a number of ways, again, not just numerical, but getting feedback from your program participants, getting feedback from employers to then make adjustment and changes. And one of those pieces is really around how do we better connect with employers and engage with them for better placement outcomes. And so we heard that loud and clear, and we hear that all the time. And so our next focus within the learning community is taking a deeper dive at employer engagement. And I'm going to take a little time to talk more about some workforce partnerships and practices that have come out of this focus here. The next 6 months, organizations are having conversations with regional employers that we hope will serve as a bridge to better understanding the needs of programs and participants and that of employers, and create some greater connections to communities of color. The focus and what we're trying to drive is more than just placement, which is needed, but also on partnership and relationship building, as well as a focus on retention and advancement. So again, how do we best engage and sustain strong relationships with employers is the focus. So beyond the transactional placement handoff is our emphasis. And when we work with CBOs across the country, we typically find that most fall into the highlighted areas there, where there is a vendor relationship. It's really just a one-to-one type of handoff. It's episodic. They might test some collaborative possibilities. There could be a shared goal, but no integrated participation in terms of a shared process. Communication could be just occasional or here and there. When we ask our organizations to think about the type of relationship they want, we ask about what's the motivation, what are their expectations for the relationship, and then to ask the employer partners that they're wanting to engage with the same question, what are their expectations, and do both of those expectations align? All right, so through the end of the year, we'll go deep into discussion and explore some promising practices. We'll hear employers, their point of view around a number of engagement practices that we've gathered from collaboratives we've been a part of or learned from across the country. And some of the pieces here that we'll focus in on, you see, is really talking about how to develop champions, employer champions, really describing the added value and the employer value, what's in it for them or for me, providing something unexpected for the employer. It could be public training dollars, retention supports, those wraparound services, and then also looking at the ways outreach is done. Right now, we know not a lot of in person, but again, virtually, how is that communication? What does that look like? How do you, as a CBO, present yourself at spaces that are still at the table, maybe not at their office, but it could be at an industry meeting or a chamber event. And then, of course, the co-development of training materials that meet the needs of the employer and the worker, and also gets into really talking about the needs of the sector as a larger entity. One of the organizations we worked with in Atlanta Career Rise, has developed this chart here that really puts these recommendations into practice. Most of the organizations there in which we work with here and across the country kind of fall in that affiliate level, where they're working with employers and it's focused on the hiring piece, which is great, maybe some interview prep and those sorts of things. Many are wanting to move to that partner level where it's around greater communication, it's co-creation of the curriculum, there's discussion about career pathways, and then that core level, you know, is kind of the greatest level, and you know, that we really want to see organizations be a part of. It's where that employer is that champion. They're providing financial commitment to the program. They're talking to their peers and the other employers around the table about this work and how they can be involved. And they're adapting their hiring process to something that they know better meets the needs of the community. So saying this is all well and good, and we've invited the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry to our conversations as another aspect of data, LMI, or labor market information data. And these recommendations are all really good and smart things to do, and much easier to do in a time of unprecedented growth, like we had between the last 10 years of February 2010 and February 2020. It was the greatest expansion of growth ever recorded. And it was a really good thing. But then, a few months later, we all know we had an unprecedented decline in job growth, which most of us, are in the same boat with Pennsylvania and experiencing this across the country. So between February 2020 and what was recorded at this time by the end of April was the largest single decline ever. And within May, the largest single month of gain on record. So unprecedented growth, unprecedented decline in just a few months. So how do we start to address this with organizations and really, again, thinking about who's impacted the most right now? So we had the department look at areas of job growth, and right now we really see the healthcare and retail in that region really has the most job postings, but you can also look at growth in industry and occupation by traditional, emerging, and foundational. And traditional is like the largest and employment-based titles that you really recognize. Emerging are above average growth. And then foundational, these have the greatest demand, but they're largely entry level and often the first jobs for many people, which means there's a lot of turnover. As we work with these organizations on examining their programs deeply, asking about outcomes, we're also connecting with the employers listed here in a more direct way and asking them about their needs during COVID, as well as, what's on the horizon in a year or two. We're talking about their greatest challenges, concerns, their needs of, and how they'd like to better work with CBOs. We're asking them about best practices and what they're doing to connect with communities of color, and as well as strategies to create these training partnerships in their focus on retention and advancement. And some of the things that we're hearing around challenges, again, about transportation, the training safety as it relates to COVID, they're wanting short-term training options as they're having staff who, unfortunately, some are getting sick, some have other obligations at home, and so they need workers. And how can you get somebody there ready to go relatively quickly? In city hiring, how do we grow our own, is what I call it, instead of going outside of the region to find talent? They want to co-create curriculum. Some are interested in job profiling, and I'll talk about that in a second. Cohort models have proven to be successful for many of the organizations that we're working with, and employers are trying to figure out how do they do more of that, as well as provide mentoring on the job. Employers are saying that the CBO role, or what they envision from their point of view, the CBO role should be on pre-screening and getting applicants up to work in terms of readiness, a focus on life skills, a focus on workplace behavior, some computer literacy and tech skills. There needs to be better communication around the CBO, as well as job applicants understanding the skill set requirements needed, and then the opportunities for advancement and what that takes to advance and the time frame it takes to advance. There needs to be an elimination, overlap, and redundancies in training that's occurring between what the CBO training provider is doing and what the employer is doing. There seems to be some overlap. And then there's some training that the employers are saying we don't need or we don't need you to do. And how do we get on the same page about that? As well as the CBO role should be an emphasis on retention support. So those are a couple things we're hearing from the employers that we're working with. And so to take this into a deeper dive and to provide you with an example, I would say about a year ago, we invited some employers to one of the peer sessions and last year, and that helped to start a relationship. I didn't even know about that this was happening until January. And so just, again, being at the table, and what the table means is different, and just cultivating opportunity for discussion is helpful. So one of the participating training providers had co-created a workforce partnership with Browns, and it's Power Corps, PHL, and they are a youth-focused organization working with youth up to age 28, as well as returning citizens within the city. And they're really applying a lot of what's been learned here, especially, and doing it really well in a tough economy. So within this partnership, Brown's ShopRite is a grocery store chain. They are moving their inventory process to a digitized process, and they have a piece of software. And if you are to be considered a manager, you must have this skill set. The challenge is that there are digital literacy gaps within the workforce at Brown's, as well as Brown not having the adequate learning space and environment for this training. So the need is to fill this computer-generated ordering position at Brown's ShopRite. Now, I do see there's some questions, but I think we'll hold to the end. So one of the strategies that they're doing is providing a 3-week co-design training program. Again, they started this in January with 6 participants, so this was kind of their test. The group is 67% Black male. The pay met Power Corps' quality jobs criteria, which after the 3-week program, you'd make $11. Advancement to a manager, you could make up to $23, as well as anyone receives 50-cent raises among other merit raises every 6 months. One person in the program has advanced to manager in 6 months. There has been 100% of the folks who graduate from the program hired, and they found that this position is really attractive to Power Corps' population because they're primarily used and more open to using technology. The hybrid training model has been successful. We're in store. There's some of the tech training on the software, and in class, they're then able to reflect and apply what's learned without interruption. For example, I heard, before people were trying to learn this software in the work environment, and because you have on the Browns name tag and shirt, people would just come up to you and say, hey, can you help me find this? Can you do this? And it just didn't work right because Brown didn't have the adequate space. And then you're able to demonstrate what you've learned in the store. So what's next? They're making improvements based on employee and employer feedback as they gathered that along the way. And some of the issues have been around content retention and wanting more time in the classroom. So they'll be making some adjustments to that, still within 3 weeks, but a little bit more time in the class. They launched a new cohort just this month with 7 individuals. And so they're wanting to grow this, but they're just starting to pilot it. So some of the added employer value is that they've been able to, PHL, reinforce soft skills and resourcefulness and problem solving for their participants. They're helping them understand when to ask for help, who to ask for help, and how to ask questions. And so that's beyond the technical piece. Those are just some really good skill building pieces. And they moved what was originally, in terms of most Power Corps trainings, 8 months to a 3-week program. And they said they were able to do that by reducing some time because they knew the employer. They understood and had conversations with the employer about some of their internal systems, some of the resources and supports they have currently in place, specifically around racial bias, which the organization has in place. And so that is a part of Power Corps piece, is they do training around that, and they do that with the employer. And they also help Brown structure the learning environment. So that was another added value that they provided the employer beyond having highly skilled employees for the supermarket. So taking the partnership a step further, CSW has a Connecting Credentials team. Not part of that team, but I can give you some information as I'm the manager between the work that the Connecting Credential team is doing in Pennsylvania. But the team has launched the Competency Project, really where credentials, as we know, connect people to jobs and educational opportunities. And the team is working to craft a common language that can help stakeholders compare the value and the suitability of different types of credentials. They've created a framework with Lumina Foundation support, and it's based on 4 major areas: knowledge and specialized skills, cognitive skills, personal skills, and social skills. The framework uses competencies. Again, that's, what the learner knows and is able to do as a common reference point to help understand and compare levels of knowledge, skills, and abilities that underlie many degrees, certifications, and more. And it can promote equity in terms that it calls for more transparent credentials, which can create more visible pathways to increase career and economic mobility for people who are historically underserved and underrepresented. And I would say it's kind of giving credit for the skills a person brings with them, no matter where it's acquired. As we work with employers, too often we hear them say, so they have this credential, we don't really know what that means. And so we're trying to unpack that more. So within Philadelphia, we have another partnership in a collaboration that we're working in with PICO, and they are the local energy utility partner, as well as with Philadelphia Works, the Workforce Development Board for the city, and again with United Way and Join. So CSW and the credentialing team have come together really at a time where PICO is developing a workforce talent management team. They're trying to look at their hiring practices in different ways and how do they acquire talent. And they heard about the work that we're doing with the learning community, and we came together with the credentialing team to create this project that we've just launched. And so in the effort, we're producing competency-based profiles of entry-level utility jobs, and we're producing profiles of partner training programs related to those jobs. And then we'll provide an analysis of the possible gaps between the job competencies and the competencies acquired by participants in the training program. Once these job profiles are created, PICO will work with some of the CBOs that are in the learning community cohort to develop training programs that meet the needs of these positions. So it's really looking at how do we talk about skills and skill requirements? How do we even talk about the position itself and advertise for that in a different way? So the competencies are presented at 8 levels, and it affirms what learners should do to demonstrate mastery. For the profiling process, we start and listen to the customer. So in this event, it's with PICO. We also work with other organizations. We worked with Goodwill and universities, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, and we talk to them about what is it that they want profiled. It could be a credential or a certificate. It could be a job in PICO situation. And so here's an example of what PICO has for their current job description. And I'm gonna go a little quicker because I know we're running out of time. And this one is an example of a draft profile we've created that focus again on competencies. another piece of one of the major core elements of the profile. So right now, PICO and the partnership is developing more profiles and making some decisions about which of the learning community training providers could be a partner in this, as well as the city's workforce development organization is providing mini grants to help those CBOs update their training programs. So they're providing resources for them to make some adjustments. So looking ahead, we're looking to see how can this profiling piece, and we're turning it into an app, be used in other ways. What's happening currently in the country, I'm really interested in seeing how it can be used in our areas of public safety and departments in a number of other ways. So we're going to continue the connections with deep discussion with employers, really looking at regional data, unpacking that data, and continuing to use data in a number of ways to make programs better, to make results better for participants, and definitely with the equity focus so that outcomes have equity across the board. So I'll leave it at that, and here's my contact information and open it up for questions.
Thank you. This is Marcy Rocky from OCCRL, and if anybody does have a question, you can put it in the chat box. We got a question about whether or not we were going to share the slides, and we will do that. So we'll share a copy of the slides along with information on the recording when it is available. And I also wanted to share the next webinar for our coffee break series this year is going to be August 4th on perspectives from the pipeline, racial equity in agriculture, education, and industry. And that'll be moderated by Dr. Jasmine Collins and give some panel discussion related to ag education. I do see a question we can take. I think we have time to address this question. The question is, have any of the initiatives been far enough along for employers to provide feedback on graduate hires a couple of years after program completion?
Yep, and that's from Rob.
Yes.
Right now, from what I know, as far as really deep of that co-creation and taking a lot of these practices into place, they have launched not years, so maybe a year. So I can't say years, but one of the things that we do stress is not to wait till somebody leaves or there's a problem, but to get that continuous feedback. And we talk about continuous feedback loops for the program so that they can get that feedback. But the biggest thing that we're hearing is that if the employer can be on the front end of that collaboration, if there's some supportive services in place that the CBO can provide or other resources, and that there's clear pathways for advancement, those are things that help with good retention and have good outcomes for that program and that collaboration. There's others, I don't know if you're just talking about Pennsylvania, but that's what I'm talking about for Pennsylvania. But nationally, yes, there are examples of collaboratives that have been happening for many years.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob. That was a good question. We are at, I think we're right at about 11:45. And so just to be respectful of your time, Kysha, and everyone else, we'll go ahead and wrap up, and I'll let everyone know. Again, I'll contact everybody with the slides as well as the recording. So thank you again, Kysha, for sharing the work that you are doing at CSW. And we look forward to connecting in the future.
Thanks so much, everybody, and have a great day. Thanks again, Marcy.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining. We encourage you to visit our website at occrl.illinois.edu to discover upcoming webinars and past webinars that are available to listen to. Please email us at occrl@illinois.edu for inquiries or to provide comments.